Society Matters.
Hello, and welcome back to hmTv. I'm Bernie Furshpan, host of Ordinary Heroes here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. My special co-host today is Jolanta Zamecka, who is my co-vice chairman here at the museum. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we have a very special guest. We are thrilled to have him on today, direct on Zoom from the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum. He is the Deputy Spokesperson, and that is Paweł Sawicki. Paweł, thank you so much for joining us this morning, all the way from Poland.
Thank you very much for this invitation.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, you're standing in front of, is that a photograph, or are you actually there?
No, I'm actually there. I'm standing at the site of the former Auschwitz I camp, so the first camp that became the central, and maybe to prove it, because it really looks like a photograph behind me, but I will take the phone, so sorry for the effects, but here is where I'm standing. Over there, at the end, there would be Arbeit-Macht-Frei gate, the main gate to the Auschwitz I camp. Here is the kitchen of the camp, and you can see that this fence continues. So I'm actually standing at the very site of the former camp.
Thank you for doing this with us. We are grateful, and it's a great opportunity for people to see that site. And it's not an image; it's a real thing. You're standing right in front of it, and I have yet to go there. My co-host Jolanta has been there, I believe, several times. Jolanta?
Correct, I have. Paweł, if you could tell us a little bit more about Auschwitz. When people think of Auschwitz, they really think of Auschwitz-Birkenau. But there were three main camps and many sub-camps. Could you give us a background about and who was interned in those camps?
So the story of Auschwitz is complicated. And of course, this is a symbol, the symbol of the Holocaust, the symbol of the atrocities of the Second World War. And I believe together with Hiroshima, these are the two words that are familiar in many places in the world. But behind the symbol, very often comes lack of more factual knowledge. And the story of Auschwitz is complicated. It started as one camp. And this is the story where it actually did start in spring of 1940 during the German occupation of Poland. The Germans created the concentration camp here in this complex of buildings, which before the war was army barracks. And at first they created the camp to target Polish intelligentsia, resistance, soldiers, to destroy people who could become resistance. But of course, the story of Auschwitz then develops. And first of all, we have geographical development. So Auschwitz had multiple camps and it became one system. Altogether, it had three main camps. Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, and Auschwitz III, and around 50 satellite camps. And the biggest part was Auschwitz II, which is called Birkenau, because that was created in the village of Birkenau in German, Brzezinka in Polish. But also when we talk about the victims of the camp, we have different groups of people and different memories here. The history of Auschwitz starts from targeting Polish men, and at first Auschwitz is only for men. Then we have some other national groups, small groups of Czech from fall of 1941, Soviet prisoners of war. But at some point in 1942, Auschwitz also became the place of mass deportation of the Jewish people. And from spring of 1942, Auschwitz also became an extermination camp targeting Jewish population. Gas chambers here were created at first to solve the problem of big shooting executions among the Soviet soldiers and some other people, but at some point in spring of 1942, mass transport of Jews started entering into the system of Auschwitz, and most of the gas chambers within the system were built in the second part at Birkenau. So when we talk about Auschwitz, we actually talk about one camp with two functions: a hybrid camp, a concentration camp targeting Poles, Jews, Roma people, Soviet soldiers, but also many smaller groups. But at the same time, at some point, it became also an extermination camp. And most of the victims of Auschwitz, some 900,000 Jewish men, women, and children never became prisoners, but they were murdered immediately in gas chambers after arrival. And some 400,000 people, half of them non-Jewish, half of them Jewish, became prisoners, registered prisoners inside the concentration camp. So that's, of course, in a nutshell, the story is much more complicated. But if you want to get to some kind of the most important parts of this development, these are the facts.
Just a quick question about the original structures. Are most of the existing structures original, or were some of them rebuilt? And what percentage of the original structures still stand today?
There will be a big difference between the site where I am, Auschwitz I and Birkenau. In Auschwitz I, most of the buildings are original. So here you can see the block number 24, which today houses part of our collection. It was a block that's similar to many where prisoners were standing. It also had some other functions within the camp. On the other side, you can see the kitchen building where food for prisoners was cooked. One thing that is not authentic, and you can see it behind me, is the barbed wire. The fence posts, and again, I may take the phone. You can see that there are many fence posts which are original, but there is no possibility for barbed wire to survive so many years. So there will be some things that, of course, we will have to change from time to time. There are some elements that the survivors, when they created the memorial, decided to reconstruct because the Germans had destroyed it, like the execution wall or a gallows. But here, most of the substance is authentic and the buildings are standing. The situation at Birkenau is slightly different because there were hundreds of buildings over there during the camp's operation, mainly wooden barracks for prisoners. Today, we have a number of brick barracks that is standing there, just some wooden barracks that survived. And also at the site of Birkenau, people can see ruins of the gas chambers and the crematoria that were destroyed by the evacuating SS men. So over there, you will see just remains of those buildings. Here at Auschwitz I, where the first crematorium and the first gas chamber of the camp were created, the original building survived, but because the SS changed purposes of the building and in 1944, it became a bomb shelter, the survivors, when they created the memorial, decided to use the original shell. They reconstruct two furnaces of the crematoria. They kind of try to bring this building back to its original more or less form, so that people who come here, people who visit the authentic site, could also enter into the building which had the first homicidal gas chamber of Auschwitz. But part of our mission, next to commemoration of the victims, is of course preservation of the authentic site, because we believe that coming here is more than a history lesson. It is a personal experience, and people can actually walk the same road, see the site where the history happened, and preservation of this authenticity is extremely important.
Paweł, if I could just go back, I had a question about Auschwitz III, because also this was a slave labor. These were slave labor camps. The Auschwitz III and also the smaller camps. I believe, for instance, I believe it was IG Farber and BMW were in Auschwitz III. And it was just this machine of really producing things, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of this slave labor?
It is a little bit more complex because, of course, prisoners of the concentration camp, no matter in which part they are, they will be working. But work is a mean to kill them. At some point when they cannot work anymore, they will die in the camp. Auschwitz was never a classic labor camp where labor has a purpose, but also the efficiency of labor is important. Here, labor is a tool of extermination. And Auschwitz III was built at the right by the building site of the huge chemical factory that was indeed planned by the German chemical company IG Farben Industry, IG Farben. There was no BMW in any of the story of the camp. And because the factory needed the prisoners and they became part of the labor forces that built the factory. And the problem was the distance between this camp and the work site, which was 6 kilometers away. At some point, they decided to create a separate camp right by the factory. And this is what we know today as Auschwitz III, which is part of the same concentration camp. It's something important to remember that no matter if we talk about Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, Auschwitz III, and the satellite camps, and there were about 50 of them, it is part of the same concentration camps. These are prisoners of Auschwitz. They, of course, geographically, these are some different locations. There will be differences between some of the sub-camps, but ultimately, Labor is just an element of the concentration camp world, which should lead to the final result, which actually was the death of the prisoners. Here in concentration camp, people live, people get some food, they starve, they suffer dehumanization. And the other part of the activity of Auschwitz from some point was mass extermination. And here we talk about people who arrived at Auschwitz, who went through the selection process. And here we talk only about Jewish people. Only Jews go through the selection, that never became prisoners in any of those camps. They arrived and they immediately were murdered in one of the gas chambers.
I have a quick question about today. The visitors that come to the museum, do you have any kind of a demographic breakdown? Are most of your visitors Jewish, or do you have a mix of ethnicities and nationalities that come to see this? And the second part of the question, are there any Holocaust deniers that actually show up and actually are convinced? Because you can't deny it when you see it.
So when we talk about visitors, they come from all over the world. Since we do not ask about religious affiliations, it's of course challenging to say how many of them will be Jewish from the religious point of view, but there are not so many Jews living in the world when we look at the demographics. But of course, there will be visitors from Israel. There will be Jewish people coming from many different countries, but most of our visitors, they will be non-Jewish. Before the pandemics, with our record year of 2019, when 2.3 million visitors arrived, around 20%, and that's the general statistics of people come from Poland, and then they come from all countries of the world. Usually when we look at the first 10 countries represented by our visitors, we'll have UK and US, we'll have Germany, Israel, Italy, Spain, France. There will also be visitors from the Czech Republic, and then, of course, many, many more. So really, this is a site, as I said, which is a symbol for the world. And among people who visit, there are people from all around the world. Holocaust denials, well, it is impossible to say if someone is a Holocaust denier. Maybe some come here. I think I once only experienced people who were asking questions that I could connect with the kind of the patterns of Holocaust denial, but they never dare to deny it openly. They just ask questions, and at some point they disappeared from the group. But basically, I would say that Holocaust deniers do not come here. The site itself is a proof of what happened. Holocaust deniers are not interested in any historical debates. They are people who hate. There are people who distort history. There are people who basically deny. They pick some little elements of the story and they try to present it like it never happened. So Holocaust denial is present online, is present on social platforms, is present in this discourse. But basically, Holocaust denials do not show here. There's probably another reason in Poland, Holocaust denier is a criminal offense. And legally, you are not allowed to deny the Holocaust. You are not allowed to say that Jewish people were not murdered in gas chambers. So denial at the site could result in legal problems. And I believe they are also aware of this. So general, the horrifying, terrible, hurtful phenomena of Holocaust denial unfortunately exists. There are people who try to use today's communication to poison people's minds with this ideology, but not at the site.
Paweł, why is it critical to continue telling the story of Auschwitz, even in 2025, nearly 80 years after liberation?
I think the story of Auschwitz from the first half of the 20th century is an important message for us people who live in the 21st century. And this is, above all, the human story. And this is a human story of all the victims that we have to commemorate. 1.3 million people deported here. 85% of them were Jewish, and Jews who came from different countries. There's 150,000 Polish people who are non-Jewish, who are among the people deported, 23,000 Roma people, 15,000 Soviet soldiers, and many smaller groups of victims. And therefore, there are many memories that this site preserves. This is also a human story from a much more difficult angle, because people are responsible for creation of this place. We're talking about the Nazi ideology. We're talking about the German state that started the war. We are talking about the SS as part of the Third Reich that operates the concentration camp. But this place was created by people who believed in certain hateful ideology, and anti-Semitism was the core of it, but there are many other smaller hatreds that the Nazi system believed in, and they use the power of the state that they take over, and Nazi Germany target many different groups of people. But this is a universal story, that people are able to create such ideologies and look at others, as inferior, as enemies, and in some kind of a certain proper situation, this prejudice can become violent and become a murderous system. And this is really a warning coming to us that humanity is capable of doing something like this. But I think the message is also can be also seen in another level. We are talking about some educated people who build this place, engineers, architects, doctors who were responsible for the crimes. And we have to remember, education is not a shield, and educated people can also hate others. But I think another universal warning that comes from this place is the question about the third group, because people were turned into victims here. Some other people became perpetrators. No one is ever born a victim or a perpetrator. But all of us in the world that we live today, we're all bystanders, and we see what can be the results of different hateful ideologies when they poison people's minds. And this place is a warning of this. But this place is, or the memory of Auschwitz should be some sort of a mirror in which we are all looking at our lives today, the world in which we live today, and maybe try to think, what is our moral responsibility as bystanders? What can we do to make the world better, so that not to repeat any of those horrifying tragedies that humanity was capable of in the past. So, of course, this is a place of commemoration, and we talk about the victims, but maybe for people who come here, but also for people who study history of Auschwitz, study the history of the atrocities of the Second World War, there must be some kind of a more universal, very difficult and challenging message coming. And the question that we should be asking ourselves is, if we know this history, what can we do today to make our world a little bit better place? This is something that is very important to us.
I find that education is impactful to some degree, but there's still hatred out there. And, you know, we really invest a lot more today than ever before in educating our young people. Do you have anything to say to young people? And when you do see them at the memorial there, the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial, what do you say to them to inspire them so that they're not bystanders, so that they stand up against hatred and do the right thing and make a difference in society?
Well, of course, we are just a little part of the process. Together with us, we have school system and educators and teachers who bring their students here. And for them, it's a longer process, and they have much more possibilities to really get engaged. But I think they can use the visit, and also our educators can use this visit. And I think something that is important that should come from this story, because many young people maybe are afraid that they are not important enough, that their acts cannot really change the world when they think about those very big things, those very critical things on the level that is seems to be not achievable. But I think something that we need to let them understand is that this responsibility will grow in time, and when they are young, they can do a little, but they need to learn that there's a choice that they're doing, that they can think of ways that they can help another human being, become volunteers, become engaged in those little things around them. And then as they grow, as they build their professional lives, their responsibility may be bigger and more important. But it's important, of course, to learn that people will get to the choice. As bystanders, we often get to the choice where we can become upstanders and do something. And learning this or teaching this should be not only our role, but also the role of families, the role of the educational world. I think another thing that is important, of course, we should teach young, but I think this place resonates with people of any age who come here, no matter if you are a student or you come here already as a shaped adult even at the end of your career or a retired person, because it's never too late to make something for others. It's never too late to learn. It's never too late to listen to this universal call that comes from this memory. And this is, I think, something important. And I believe there's also one more aspect that comes from this very complicated story. In our human story, everything is complicated. We live in the world that strives for polarization. Everything is black and white. Everything should get easy answers. We have the populisms and other ideologies like this present everywhere. And this story teaches us that humans are much more complicated. There are nuances, there are different colors, and we have to look at this very carefully, not to judge immediately, not to put everything in those black and white perspectives. But maybe this place also shows us another thing, which is very difficult in the world we live today. How important it is to build bridges between people. How important it is to have an understanding that people can have different opinions, that people come from different backgrounds, and our diversity actually enriches us as humanity, that we are different and we can work together. And building bridges between cultures, religions, nationalities is very difficult. It takes time. One thing we have to remember, destroying those bridges is just a moment, and then it's very difficult to rebuild them. So I would say that if we have some kind of a more educational message, it will be this importance of looking at the nuances of history. It is this important that this responsibility grows in time, and this is very important for us humans to listen to each other and to try to find a way so that the dialogue between us could actually enrich us. And that's something that we seem to be missing a little in the world today.
Paweł, that was beautifully said. I mean, really, we agree with you 100%. I have more of a personal question. How does spending every day in Auschwitz affect you personally?
Well, this is a challenging work, and you see where I'm standing. This is my workplace. But one thing is very important to understand. I am standing inside the Auschwitz Memorial. This is a museum, a site of memory created by the survivors who wanted this place to have a meaning. I'm not working in a concentration camp, and sometimes people ask how it is to work in a camp. I don't work in a camp. I work at the institution created to commemorate everything that happened here. And this is what helps. This is, I think, what helps to shape my personal mission of, I'm one of many. There are hundreds of people coming here to work every day. We preserve the site, and there is a conservation, of course, a huge part of the museum that tries to preserve all this authenticity. There will be our researchers, the educational department, but also accounting and the press office that I'm part of. But I think it's important to find a meaning and find a sense. And I had honor to meet many survivors in my life who gave us their story, gave us their opinions, participated in that discussion. So I think, and I've been working here for over 18 years. So it seems that maybe I found what is the purpose of the existence of this place, preservation of this place, and maybe how can we change people? Whether we think that we are just one institution in the world out of many, and maybe putting the responsibility of fixing humanity or changing humanity will be too much for us. But I do believe that we have a possibility of changing a human being who comes here with the stories that we have to tell, and that the visit in the preserved authentic site have this transformative power. And people certainly walk different from how they enter. And this discomfort of being challenged with the story that happened here over 80 years ago should be this kind of seed that will later give fruit, that will spark reflection, that people will be reflecting on the memory that they are building inside them thanks to a visit at the authentic site.
You know what's a wonderful thing that gives me hope today is, first of all, we speak the same language. And I don't mean that literally, but figuratively. You are halfway around the world, and the words you use are the words we use. The only difference is that we have images of Auschwitz-Birkenau. You're actually there. We hope that we impact our young people here who come through the museum every day to have the same kind of impact that you have. It's obviously more difficult, but we want them to use their imagination when they look at these pictures, what life was like there. You can actually show what it's like, and it's very impactful. I owe myself a visit to your place, and I will be in touch with you because I plan on doing it sometime within the next year. So I have nothing else to add. You've really informed us quite a bit about what you do there, your mission, which is in common with our mission. And it's we believe what you believe, and that is we can impact humanity. We can change the world, but it takes a lot of people power to move the needle, and that's what we're all doing. It's good winning over evil, and I believe that good can win over evil. Jolanta, do you have any last things you'd like to say?
I think working together, and that's really the essence, is working together. People of various faiths working together for really humanity.
For humanity. We are all related. That's the point here.
So, Paweł, thank you.
And people that work in the field of preserving memory of Auschwitz or different camps or the Holocaust. But maybe there's one more thing which is important. When we have this distance, I'm here and you're there on the other side of the ocean. During the experience of the global pandemics of COVID, we actually developed a program that is already functioning. And this is the program of online guided tours, which means it happens live. A guide is here using a cell phone like I'm doing, but there is a special platform that is built for this. It is called Auschwitz in front of your eyes. And people can sit in a classroom, in an auditorium, connected, or even in front of their own computers. And there's a guide here going through the sites of Auschwitz I and through the site of Birkenau and actually telling the story. There is a possibility of interaction, asking questions, seeing many multimedia materials. So you may also try to use this in your education. And that's one thing. And as you could hear, I slipped and started saying Auschwitz not long ago, not far away, because there's also a traveling exhibition that right now is in the United States with over 500 original artifacts from Auschwitz, but also some things from other institutions. It just opened in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Union Terminal there. It will be there for half a year. It was in several other places in the United States. So also in the US, people have the possibility of going to a huge exhibition with multi-layer context and also has this contact with the authenticity of the objects coming from here that tell a longer story. So thank you very much for your engagement. It's very always encouraging to see people trying to do the same. Sometimes very far away. It is important. This kind of building this coalition is something that should give some fruit in the future. Thank you.
Paweł Sawicki, thank you so much for joining us today. We are grateful that you took the time to do this podcast with us.
Thank you, Paweł.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank our listening and watching audience for joining us today here on hmTV. I'm Bernie Furshpan, host of Ordinary Heroes. Today we spoke with an extraordinary hero, Mr. Paweł Sawicki, who is the Deputy Spokesperson for the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial in Poland. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Stay tuned for other great podcast episodes here on hmTV. Until next time.